And I met you in 2013. Okay, those times that we worked together were great because I learned a lot from you. I would just come and sit in your office. From you, I appreciate that. But I would just come and sit in your office and we would just talk. And then I would leave like a 15 to 30-minute conversation was a college degree. So, but there's so much that you did before we met. So I'm just gonna sit back and I just want to ask a simple qualitative question.
Okay.
Tell me how you got to NC State.
Before I say this, I want to say that for the most part in my career, I've never had to make a distinction between who I am and what I do.
Okay.
So I don't ever go to work. I go to do what I do. And luckily people have agreed to pay me for that. But okay.
Sure.
All right. Well, I can't have this conversation without talking about 3 defining moments of my life. And I'm gonna, this could take a long time. Okay. I was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1947 in segregation. I was born to 2 parents whose parents saw fit to send them to Knoxville College. So they went to HBCUs, as did 8 other people in my family. So first of all, there's that kind of educational tradition, right?
Yes.
Where we're learning by osmosis just about being around people who are educated and listening to the things that they're talking about. All right. But I took some training once and the facilitator asked me if I would take a couple of weeks to come up with my original memory. What is the first thing I remember as a human being? And I said, I thought. And then I said, well, I remember being out in front of my house in Chattanooga, Tennessee, in segregation, and aware of it, holding my uncle's hand, and this trash truck comes by. And the trash truck comes by, and there's some wadded up paper in the trash can. And I say, Uncle CH, what is that? He said, that's where they put bad kids. Screwed me up for the rest of my life. Screwed me up for the rest of my life. That's the first time I felt or believed or had a sense that all of this comfort and love I had around me could be taken from me. That's the first time I felt that there could be a sense of separation. And I realized that I never want to be in a trash truck. I don't want nobody I know to be in a trash truck. And so I am obsessed about what it takes to make relationships work. I'm not telling you that I got it right. I'm telling you I'm obsessed with that now. If we take that back to the nature thing and the selfish defensive territorial thing, if I'm interacting with groups who are using the survival things, right, I've got to know how to get them to be less afraid and to bring them back to be able to have a conversation in community.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that started with the trash truck.
Okay.
Then my father went to Howard University, got his master's degree. He went to Catholic University, got a PhD. My mother went to George Washington University, got her master's degree and PhD. So I'm living in a house. With 2 PhDs. And I think maybe Terrence Ruth told me that that's only true about 13% of Black people in the country. Yeah. So I was very fortunate to have those people around. And of course, when you grow up around that kind of education and that kind of curiosity, again, learning is just in the air. I was driving. I guess I was driving to Chapel Hill the other day, and I have these soundtracks. And the soundtrack for Lil Abner came on.
Really?
And I'm singing Lil Abner. I'm going, what is a Black guy doing? Singing Lil Abner. But that's how my parents were. What I think my parents wanted us to know how to do more than any other thing in the world was to code switch. To move effortlessly between cultures, either knowing so much about the culture that you could interact effectively, or being so ingratiating that they would accept you.
Understand? Okay.
And that's 2 different things.
Yeah.
Knowing enough about the culture. I've been spending a lot of time around Indigenous people, and I'm on thin ice because I don't know what to say. You know how that is.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing I can do is to learn so much about indigenous people that I know what they want to do. The other thing is I can appear so interested and concerned and compassionate that they will allow me to make mistakes and to help me grow.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Gotcha. All right.
All right. So I'm in Tennessee. I'm in DC. I about flunked out of high school. I had 17 Fs in 2 years in high school because my parents separated, but they couldn't move out. So they were separated, living in the same house. And I was the only kid at home at that point. And it just wasn't, I went to school. I ain't never missed a day of school. I love school. I'd rather be at school than be at home.
Okay.
Right. But getting homework done and, so almost flunked. I was the last guy to graduate in my graduating class. Had a graduating class of 325. I was 325.
Oh.
Then I went to HBCU in Tennessee. Of 300 people. Spent 2 years there to get my grades back up.
Yes.
And it wasn't that I didn't understand things. It's just my grades didn't reflect them.
Yes.
I
understand.
Oh, yeah. So I left Morristown, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I moved to California to be with my sister. There was a family conspiracy that we don't have time to go through right now.
Okay.
So
you told me.
Yeah. So I moved to Los Angeles. And I've always been up for the possibility, right? I've always, been a curious guy, and I want to see what's going on. And I think I was in Los Angeles the weekend. I cried because every day I got up, that big yellow thing was going to be in the sky. There wasn't going to be no rain. There wasn't going to be no clouds. It was going to be sameness. It's going to be sameness every day. And of course, the Los Angeles culture, the West Coast culture, is different than the East Coast culture.
Definitely.
But, for a person who never had done a whole lot of drugs or alcohol, the first night I was in Los Angeles was the first night I smoked marijuana. Because my cousins were.
Yeah, they were getting it in.
There was any of that, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't even really smoking that. But,
Yeah.
All right. Then I went to Cal State Sacramento. I was majoring in broadcasting and journalism. I was going to be Brian Gumble. I was going to create ESPN. But in order to do that work, you have to take the engineering part of broadcasting. So you have to know all about receivers and FFA and all that. And I wasn't interested in any of that. So I wasn't doing well. Plus, the guy told me, he said, you can major in this, but I don't know if you're going to get a job. They're not hiring a lot of black people to do this work. Right. That's when there were black radio stations. And, and the commentators were, pretty much.
The same. Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, maybe you ought to go change your major. Okay. And so I went over to the Dean of Admissions, and he said, well, this is your last shot. If you don't make it this time, we're going to have to suspend you. And so he said, Mickey, what do you really like? And I say one of those things like, well, I really like people. Yeah. And he goes, well, why don't you go over and talk to Dr. Needy in Parks and Recreation? Why don't you go over and talk to Dr. Needy in Parks and Recreation? And you see what you think about that. So Dr. Needy was in the Depression of Oklahoma Sooner. If you can imagine what this white man looks like. He has a crew cut. He's got bow legs. He's ruddy. And if you would ever think that somebody could be the most racist person in the world, I mean, but you don't want to make those kind of assessments.
But yeah.
Yeah. And so this is the person who established me in the field of Parks and Recreation. He introduced me to the people on the faculties all over the country. He introduced me to department heads all over the country. And so, so I really started to begin to understand the power of Parks and Recreation.
Okay.
All right. Then I graduated from Sac State. By the way,
yes,
when I went to Sac State, because this is another thing that defines my work.
Yeah.
When I went to Sac State, when I went to Morristown, it was an all-black school of 300 students.
Yep.
I moved into a dorm of 300, and there were only 3 black students in the dorm. Yeah. Imagine what kind of cultural transition that is.
Oh yeah.
And my life has been a series of those transactions, transitions. When I went to Oregon to go to graduate school, which was right after Sac State,
Yes.
I remember talking to my black friends, and I said, "I'm going to go to the University of Oregon." They said, "Boy, don't go 5 miles either side of I-5." Because if somebody has out there that the last legal lynching in America was in Oregon, and it might have been or it might not have been, but they're still talking about it. And all my white friends were saying, "God, man, you get to go to Oregon and be up there with all the critters and the woods and all that stuff." And there's always been this thing. And then when I went to Big Basin, which I haven't talked about yet, I went to this Redwood Park to restore my life. And all my white friends are saying, "You're going to get to go spend 4 minutes among 15,000 acres of redwood trees." And I'm going, "Yeah." And they said, "Man, what a privilege." And all my black friends are saying, "They're going to lynch you from under the redwood trees." but then you know that they don't know what they're talking about, because there ain't no limb close enough to the ground. There ain't no limb close enough to the ground. All right. I need to go back to the March on Washington.
Thank you. I was hoping.
August 28th, 1963, Saturday morning. My mother wants to go to the March on Washington, and I'm into it.
And how old are you at that?
I am 16.
Okay.
I'm 16. I'm about to be a senior in high school. And so she says, "I really want you to go." And I said, "But Mom, it's going to be a lot of speeches, all that stuff." But that wasn't the period where you argue with your parents.
Yes. Yeah. I grew up a little bit after that.
Yes.
Exactly.
See, my son be trying to get something out of it, a video game, or my daughter be trying to get something out of it. No, I got smacked if I didn't go. I knew I was going to get smacked, so I went. 3 things happened there.
Yes.
And one is the first time I saw America look like America. With all of the people that they talked about in America. Because at that march, everything was there. You got black people, white people, people with garb on that indicates they're from somewhere else, people speaking languages. And I'm saying, oh, so this is what this melting pot thing is. This is what this is supposed to look like. And I'm saying, I kind of like this.
Okay.
And then Martin Luther King gave a speech, one but a 15-minute speech. And the first 7 minutes was fire and brimstone, man, about racism, about the sweltering heat of racism and the check mark and insufficient funds. And it was all that stuff. And then it was like kind of heating people up, So, and this is really interesting about life. I've been looking at the concept of how much emotion I assign to stuff lately. So if I look back at that, and when he said that stuff about white people, my body assigned a lot of emotion to that, going, this ain't right and this ain't good. And then my survival gene.
That's right. Right. Yeah.
I'm afraid, I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
But then halfway through the speech,
oh boy, here we go.
But I have a dream today. And it was the most unbelievable words after that speech I think I've ever heard. People will find in their life that there are things that get into their central nervous system. Things get in their central nervous system and never get out.
Yeah.
And that speech, when he started talking about what happens if we get this right.
Yeah.
And with all the equity work that I've had to do since 1970, I've always tried to approach it not from who's to blame and what's wrong, but what happens if we get this right? Why are we focusing on what's possible rather than focusing on what's wrong? Because if we go back and focus on what's wrong, it will take us back into the pathology.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, and then the third thing that happened when the march was over, and there was a exhaustion, excitement vibe. Have you ever felt that where you're totally exhausted, but you're excited?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Listen to music sometimes or yeah.
Yeah, just wore out, but something's coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then I felt the civil rights movement become a human rights movement. I literally felt it happen.
Right.
I felt though people getting a different idea about what the civil rights movement was, and knowing that they are as affected by it as anybody. People still denying that today, but you could see the civil rights movement becoming a human rights movement, and that's when we got voting rights and Civil Rights Act and CETA and model cities and all those programs. Through Lyndon Johnson, they got all those programs, and then Ronald Reagan just came. Yeah. He just came and screwed it.
Yeah.
So when I graduated from Sac State, the state parks director, who my department head will be instrumental in me meeting all these people, said, "Mickey, I want you to do a survey." And I said, "Yes, sir." I said, "What would you like to survey?" He says, "I want to know why Black people don't go camping and hiking." This was in 1970.
70 now. 24, y'all. 54 years ago.
When I interviewed for the job as deputy director of the National Park Service, the Department of Interior chief of staff asked me, "Mickey, what you going to do to get more people camping?" That was from 1970 to 2009. To 2009. Yeah. So I just want to throw that in there.
Thank you.
All right. Then I went to the University of Oregon, where I got my graduate degree in Parks and Recreation and History, Theory, and Philosophy of Parks, Recreation, and Leisure.
Okay.
So I studied the historical and philosophical foundations of how people use their discretionary time. Because when you look at people's discretionary time, you can tell who they really are. They become, when they get free time, they become who they really are. Right? Okay. Right. All right. So, and then I was kind of on the basketball staff, helping with the off-court life of the basketball players. And so I really got involved and I was always involved in basketball, but I really got involved in basketball at that point. Okay. Very, very different state than California.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. When I went up there in April to see if I wanted to go to school, I was walking around and the white people looked like ghosts because they were so pale. Because they had no sun.
No sun.
And then I was just in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
It was the same way. But yeah. But the time in Eugene is another defining moment. Okay. Again, I'm walking into an environment, right? I'm walking into an environment that's very different than the environment I know, which means learning the culture, learning how to code switch, and then learning how to be humble.
Yes.
To be able to talk to people became really, really important.
Okay.
So I taught graduate classes, history, theory, and philosophy of parks, recreation, and leisure, and a lot of courses about thinking about what parks and recreation really is.
Okay.
And so then I got a job as a bartender at the most popular bar in Eugene, a place called W. Stavron. Okay. And I was only two Black people working there. Okay. And I remember Friday night after the picture sale, these white boys come from Eastern Oregon, and they get liquored up and they want to say bad stuff. I mean, So I remember this guy said once I was checking ID at the door, and I said, "Oh, your ID is fake, man. I can't let you in." And he said, "You better go back to the South, boy." And Thomas, you will know what a case knife is.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I used to carry a case knife because of you. And nobody knew that I had it, and nobody knew that I could use it, but I learned from the best. I learned from the Birmingham people, man. I learned from the Birmingham people, and somehow I got my knife out of my pocket and up to this guy's neck backwards because I didn't really want to cut him. But the fact that I could do it backwards, then people going, "Damn,
yeah, so quick."
And this ain't the Black guy we thought he was.
Yeah,
we thought this is Mr. Educated, Mr. You don't go there, Black guy, right? So, yeah. So, but those people that I work with at the bar and the people on the basketball team, I'm closer probably to the people in Oregon than any of the people I went back. Then I went back to California, worked for the government of California as the assistant to the state parks director. And and the staff to something called the Governor's Urban Task Force for Enrichment.
Okay.
How do we use enrichment services to increase people's quality of life? How do we strategically? And one of the great things about working for Jerry Brown and his administration was that he's a philosopher politician, and that he made decisions based on philosophy, not based on votes.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I mean, So, I work in Los Angeles, living in Sacramento. It's when I meet wife number 2, and I'm in Los Angeles since I'm separated from my first wife. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm having a ball. I'm meeting people's like on the governor's list level. Like you may not know who Peter Coyote is.
Yes.
Peter Coyote is the guy who had the keys in ET.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
The guy ET and Jane Fonda was the chair of the Arts Commission, and Marsha McLuhan's daughter was the chair. And I'm interacting with all these people, and then I started getting with entertainment people.
Okay.
Had the time of my life, right? But Thomas, they got a concept. They don't even articulate it. Eric Fromm articulates this. They got a concept called linear orgiastic fusion.
Okay.
If you can line one orgiastic experience close enough to another,
Yes.
you don't never have to come down.
Oh, yes, I got you. I can stay there. Right. I can stay there.
Here's it. I can
Yes.
stay if I can line them up. And of course, these people and these are people whose names you would recognize,
Right.
have been doing that for generations. But their fathers did that with different stuff. But Hollywood's always been kind of like that.
Okay.
So I got in that, and I realized that there wasn't nothing good going to come out of this. So I had left the governor's office to go work in Los Angeles, and I realized I need to change my life. I'm going in the wrong direction. I was having a ball. I still remember. I still talk to people about stuff we did and we can't believe. But that was the 60s, 70s, 80s, right? That was the 60s, 70s, 80s. Right? Yeah. So anyhow, I decided I have to go somewhere to get away from the influences that are causing me to do these bad things.
Yep.
Now, I've never done anything intentionally to hurt anybody. Okay, I just want to say that. I mean, I'm not that kind of person. But so I decided I'm going to go work in a park, and that I'll go work in a state park. And the state park director was another one of those people like J.R. Needy, the white guy from Oklahoma, who were the two people most responsible for any success I've had in parks and recreation before John Jarvis.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. So anyhow, I decided I want to go work in a park, and I go talk to Russ Cahill, who was my boss, who's now saying, "So what's up?" And I kind of explain what the situation is. And he says to me, "Mickey, you can do this, but if you do this, you have to do this in the entry-level position. You have to do this as a park aide, making $8 an hour, carrying a bag and a pokey stick." Now,
Wow.
governor's office,
Yeah.
park aide, $8 an hour, pokey stick.
Oh man.
What do people in the park think? What do the people who are working in the park think? Who is this guy?
Yeah.
Who is this guy? And I mean, it was pretty interesting.
The transition.
But we agreed, and so I went to Big Basin State Park in Boulder Creek, California. So I did a interview of a regular chief. That I am now another one of those things I'm trying to get out.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So they were going to do a campfire, and I'm part of staff. So even though I've had all this experience and all that, so I can't go, man, I don't want to be bothered with that. No, these people are doing me a favor. I don't even know what kind of favor they're doing me until after this is over.
Yeah.
I have no idea what kind of favor, but these people are doing me a favor, so I got to do what they asked me to do. So, and I know how to do camp. I took campfire class.
Yeah.
All right. So we decided we're going to do the campfire. We're going to do it like the Johnny Carson show. Okay. So there's going to be a Johnny, right? And you're going to have a little desk. And then the other things that inhabit the park will come up and talk to Johnny.
Okay.
So stellar jay, banana slug, tan bark oak, a certain I don't know what it wasn't a chipmunk, but it was something like that. So they would come and sit down, and Johnny would say, "Okay, so tell me about your life in the park." Right? And the banana slug would say, "No, I'm good." And I said, "Let's slide around here, and let's not see unless I'm seized by anything." So I'm the redwood tree. So I decide before I do this, I'm going to go sit beside a redwood tree. Now, in redwood forests don't burn very easily. As a matter of fact, there's a tree called the chimney tree in Big Basin State Park, where the whole tree is burned up through the middle, and you can look up through the tree.
Yeah.
So there were times when the tree would catch fire and would burn a hole a little ways up in the center of the tree.
Yeah.
And that's called a goose pin. And the people who were managing their flocks along Highway 9, when they got to the redwoods, they would put their geese or lambs or whatever in the goose pen and then shut it off. That's why they call it.
Okay.
All right. So I actually went and sat inside the goose pen.
Okay.
And I started asking questions, and I started answering questions the way I thought a tree would answer the question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this started off really silly.
Okay.
It started really, really silly.
Mm-hmm.
I get in the tree, I go, "Hi." And the tree said, "Yep, 300 feet. So there's that kind of stupid banter that you would have when you're introducing each other. And she's the mother forest. She's trying to find out who you are. You're trying to find out who she is. So it's all silly stuff. And the campfire went well. But every day I was in the park, I went and sat in the tree.
Okay.
And asked questions and answered questions the way I thought a tree might answer questions.
Mm-hmm.
One of which is, how come black people don't go camping at night? The question. Right. All right. So, but I would ask the tree questions like, so I'm 30 at the time. When you're 30, you don't think you're going to live long.
Yep.
So I'm 30, and I'm talking about death. And I said, it's one of those things I'm afraid of. She said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I don't want to stop living." She says, "You realize that in nature, nothing ever die, it just becomes something else."
Mm-hmm.
Right? It just falls, it decomposes,
Yep.
and it becomes something else. And it may end up a part of a frog or a part of a butt, but the original living thing is still there.
Yes.
And the tree said, death is like my uncle who's a cabinet in San Francisco. You understand that?
I understand.
He ain't gonna never become nothing else.
Yeah.
He'll be a cabinet in San Francisco, where even the biggest, most formidable redwood trees, if they fall, are going to decompose, and hundreds of things are going to grow out of the street.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was really interesting. And then let's see, which other one would I tell you about? Well, the why black people don't go camping.
Mm-hmm.
Tree says, I go, "What is it about black people in nature?" And the tree says, "What do you mean?" Or colored people. And the tree says, there were indigenous people, and then there were Hispanics, and they went through the parks, and all that kind of stuff was not like, so what is it with black people?
Mm-hmm.
And the tree says to me, "I want you to walk out there in the park, and I want you to find something your color. And as soon as you find something your color, you come back."
Mm-hmm.
Took me about 30 seconds. Right. To find something that's kind of my color.
Like brown tint, yeah.
Right. Says only one color in nature that only exists as something transitory or as a bloom. I'm not saying what the tree told me.
And I know what you're talking about.
I'm not saying what the tree told me.
Mm-hmm.
But and then the tree, when we started getting serious, well, the tree the first night said, "Why are you here?"
Mm-hmm.
And then she would periodically say, "Why are you here?" And now the answer is changing. Because of what's happening to me.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I here? Because I'm trying to get my life back together. Right? I'm trying to make sure I got a future. I'm trying to make sure that my family is proud of the investment they made in me.
Yeah.
All right. So that's why I'm there.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe 3 weeks in, I'm there because I'm learning some stuff that I need to share with some other people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also learning about the system, and because I'm a centralized person working on the decentralized. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of stuff, and then I said, then the tree says at the end, so why were you here? And do you see how what happened at the start?
Wow. Yeah.
Is so radically different.
Yeah.
Man, no, so I'm not deputy director in the National Park Service if I don't have this experience.
Uh-huh.
I begin to understand nature. I still don't go camping. I love nature. I love being in beauty. I'm not much on, I'm terrified of not sleeping. There's a whole bunch of stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
But if there's nothing more important to me than nature. And now I find out, and this is one of the things I found out when I'm out there, I found out I'm like nature with the selfish defense of territorial thing, right?
Yes.
And then I found out about the other thing. So now I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be taking this diversity, creating kinship, create order.
Yes.
Sometimes initiating, initiating randoms.
Okay, yeah. Initiate randomness.
To the degree that you can initiate it. Yeah.
Okay.
And so most of my jobs have been about those things.